Inching ever closer to the Four Nations face-off, we're going to get into who the starting goaltenders will be for the respective clubs. It's InGoal Radio, the podcast with Darren Millard, David Hutchison, and Kevin Woodley. Gentlemen, how are you doing today?
So well.
A little groggy, a little tired. We're good.
We're not used to these morning recording sessions, eh? Yeah.
So the energy level might be down a little bit. I forgot my coffee up in the kitchen.
Oh, do you want to run up and get it? Hutch and I can fill for... How long does it take you to get a coffee?
Let's start the timer.
All right, go. Hutch, we were on with USA Hockey taking the goaltending course.
We were.
The bronze level goaltending course. And we were fortunate enough to be included in the Alaskan region. And it was a 2-night course, 3 to 4 hours on both nights. It was extensive.
It was great.
What was your first takeaway from that? And then we'll get into some of the other details of what USA Hockey is trying to do here.
My first takeaway was that it was fantastic. And as I mentioned last week, somewhat rooted maybe in philosophy, how we want things approached correctly. Last week, we mentioned the concept of it being about creating more goaltenders and more kids who are happy being goaltenders and that right sport environment. You wanted to bring up a video that we saw this week. You teased last week that you wanted to talk a little bit about sport culture in Norway, right?
Norway.
And that fantastic video that was just all about the culture of sport in Norway. And it's a bill of rights, I think, for young athletes that they have in the country. Very progressive. I hope there's some way we can share that video at some point, but I'm not sure that we'll be able to. But that sort of underpinned it because I felt, Darren, I don't know about you, when we got into the more technical side of goaltending, technical light on the second day, even that felt like it was very rooted in philosophy and doing things the right way. What makes a good practice? How can we alter a practice as a head coach so that we're creating a better environment for our goaltenders and our players? Themes that we've talked about here before, but I think they've wrapped up into a fantastic package that is going to benefit all of their goaltenders and their players going forward. It was really well put together and great to be part of such a good experience with nearly 100 people sitting in on this.
Woody is back.
Things like drill design, right? Like they didn't just say, okay, here's a drill you can use to work on skating, or here's a drill you can use to work on that. Rather than telling everyone or giving them the tools, they wanted them to think about how they build those tools. As a matter of fact, with the assignment that comes at the end of it is to build your own drill. And it was amazing because the foundations of a good drill, and these are based on things like learning. They've looked at learning models, different elements are not necessarily what we see on a day-to-day basis. Even me in the National Hockey League, like I joked with the group that if you wanted to cheat your drill design, we've got a couple hundred of them at InGoal Premium. But the reality is a bunch of them, even right up to the NHL, wouldn't sort of fit the foundations of good drill design, right? Quite often we've got pucks that aren't related to each other, where one shot comes from one area and then the drill continues from another area without finishing on that first puck, where they're not integrated, things that never happen in a game. And so, the way they walked us through really thinking about how you would design a drill, as you said, Hutch, how you would design a practice, how to keep goalies engaged, how many reps of a drill to work on, what to look for in terms of learning and skill acquisition, in terms of ramping a drill up with progressions or even pulling it back with regressions, depending on how it's going with goalies of different ages. Like it was really rooted in those type of foundational things, as opposed to here's what we want to work on. Here's a drill to do it. Go out and do it. And they had examples, like I mentioned, the NHL stuff. They had examples of them working with Olympic athletes in USA camps that they're like, okay, what's wrong with this drill design? Here's what we were doing 7-8 years ago.
Hey, here's a question. If you guys were going to talk to another coach after sitting through this, what's one thing as a takeaway that you would tell them to try and do in their next session? You can't woodify it and turn it into 14 things in one sentence. It's got to be just one thing you would tell another coach if you sat down with them.
Woodify?
Yeah. Is that pretty good?
I like that.
I like it too.
Okay, one thing you would say to either a head coach or a goalie coach as a takeaway from that they could implement tomorrow.
Include your goaltender in the drills, in the practice a lot more. Have some goalie, not specific drills, but some drills aimed at bettering your goaltender.
Okay,
that was
a good takeaway.
That jumped out to me.
Woody, one thing.
Oh, I know I'm struggling to come up with one thing because I think it depends on the age. I think it really does. My biggest thing would be for a coach that's working with young goalies is my whole takeaway from the whole thing is how silly it is that we do starter backup at such a young age or dedicated goalies. I would have them making sure that every kid is trying the equipment.
So I really liked one that's perhaps for older goaltenders, but not necessarily, where the shooter knew what the options were in the drill, but the goaltender did not. And then if the shooter scored, they had to keep repeating that until the goaltender made a save. So the goaltender was...
Can you give us an example?
Yeah,
of
well,
that?
there was that drill that was walking out of the corner. Was one of the U.S. Olympic women's goaltenders did not know that the shooter had the option going net front, wrapping, and so on. And then when the shooter beat her on the first rep to the far post and managed to score, he had to make the very same move the next time. So without telling her how to fix it, she could problem solve the scenario because she faced it a few times in a row. But it was one that, but she didn't know. She also didn't know it was coming multiple times in a row. So she didn't know what it would be initially, and she didn't know it was coming multiple times in a row. And she didn't have a coach step in and say, here's how you fix it, because the learning comes in the problem solving that you're undergoing on your own.
I mean, we talk about recognizing patterns, and a big focus of this was play reading and the importance of reviewing it, especially once you get to certain ages, fit perfectly with InGoal's ProReads, interestingly enough, but figuring that out, right? Like being able to read it and figure it out on your own, problem solve, connecting the patterns of the game on your own, as opposed to a coach telling you what's coming and telling you what to do. You have to figure, hey, they keep shooting blocker, I can't stop it. Oh, now I've stopped it. Oh, and the next one's going glove. Like changing things up, but only after you're stopped you're right. That was a very interesting one. But again, method behind the madness, not just randomly, hey, we found this works, but hey, we found this works and it's based in some learning methodology or background or philosophy. I'm not sure the proper word to put on that, but it's rooted in some type of thought process beyond just randomness.
The first session really was focused on the associations and helping guide you to create more goaltenders, create a path towards giving players the option to become goaltenders. And expose that position to everybody on the team,
and want to stay goaltenders.
Yeah, and that was a great add to not just get them in it, but inspire them to continue on with the position. I love the idea of splitting time. That there's not full games to a certain age, and we can all debate that might be a little bit too late. Where you're still splitting time, but at least it had the emphasis on it at a 7, 8, 9, 10 level, where I think that full games are certainly in our three neck of the woods. It's certainly more full games, and then in the second half you did get into some drills, but not a lot of save selection or how to play a certain situation. There wasn't a lot of that, and I left thinking that was different than how I expected coming in. I thought there'd be more of that.
They don't tell you how to do it. They
Right.
get you to think about why you're doing it.
Yes. And I, going into it, would have been shocked that there wasn't more save selection, and maybe disappointed that there wasn't, because I look forward to that kind of thing with ProReads on InGoal and the different situations that Woody is able to talk about with his Sensorina feature interviews. But I wasn't sad that it wasn't in there at the end, because there was so many other layers to it.
Well, and like I said, I think they got you to think about why, and that's what they want. They don't want to be telling you, here's exactly how to do it. Now, there was some elements, hey, at this age, here's where our focal point is. At this next age, here's where the focal point is. They walk through the different phases of save selection, the different phases of being a goaltender, and I'd have to pull it up to sort of,
but it was very structured on age and how you implement the save selection process.
But it never told you how to do it. And I think that's kind of the point, right? Get people start thinking about why and, why we design drills and how that relates to that process in a game for goaltenders, and tie those things together and think about why and how we're tying it together, as opposed to here's how to do it, go do it. And I'm with you. It wasn't necessarily what I was expecting, but I think all of those are good things. Like, they still got into the fundamentals of goaltending. And this is what I was thinking, the wheel, play reading being the hub, but like stance, skating, position, save selection, rebound control, recovery, right? Like, but not telling you how to do each one. They talked a little bit about stances and different ages and things like that. But again, they didn't hammer you over the head with, there's only one way to do it. This is how we do it. We want you to go out and create a bunch of little robots.
I think what they're doing is they're sort of blending the best of both worlds in a debate that we've had here before. How many times has Woody brought up the so-called Russian school of goaltending, where kids are not overly instructed at a young age. They just go out there and play. And that idea of layering the technique on later as you get older, and you've already got this sense for how to play the game a little freer. And I think they're sort of blending the best of both worlds, because they're creating some structure to that early learning environment so that it's a little bit more purposeful without telling the kids exactly how to do it. I think it's a great blend. And it's going to pay dividends for kids down the road if coaches are able to implement it.
And that is an if, because I know it's funny. I was talking to somebody whose young goalie is in a net that's far too big for them. And this person, I didn't say I'd relay this conversation on the podcast, so I won't name names without that permission. But like his little guy is in a net that is way too big for him in the United States, because their association hasn't adopted these philosophies unilaterally that USA Hockey's talked about.
And that philosophy is just
at what ages you're using intermediate nets to. So he's got a little guy who's using a full size net far before these recommendations would have him using a full size net, and the kids are literally just shooting over his head, and dad's having to tell him, like, don't worry, there's nothing you can do about that, because you can't reach it. Like, you're just physically not big enough to reach it. And they did a great job, I think, in the presentation of showing you why that's wrong and why that's bad, not just for the goalie, but for the shooters. Because it just creates a bunch of kids that put their head down and lift the puck and shoot into the top of the net all the time, as opposed to learning how to actually play the game. But to Hutch's point about not over telling you what to do, as they said to us, right? Like play reading is the hub of all the different things, all the different fundamentals of goaltending. They want to create a generation of problem solvers. And so if they give the bronze level volunteer coaches all the answers and the how-tos, then how are they going out there and creating a generation of problem solvers in terms of the young goalies trying to, as Hutch's example of that drill and how they set it up so that she had to solve the problem. They're getting young goalies with the way they teach us. They're hopefully getting goalie coaches that are working with them, these volunteer goalie coaches, to instill that in how they work with them, so that this next generation, like, they figure it out on their own, as opposed to being always told, here's the answer. Hey,
and let's face it, it actually makes it better for that system of volunteer goalie coaches, because how many people are intimidated about the thought of coaching a goaltender who don't have experience? Heck, even when I had experience, I was intimidated by the thought of all the forums on the internet telling me how you have to hold your glove and don't do it this way, don't do it that way, nitpicking all the technique. Now we're saying you just have to create an environment that enables learning for kids. You don't have to be the expert in order to design great drills and have a great experience for young goaltenders. You just have to be able to put it together, and those kids are going to learn. So anybody can do it.
It's funny you say that. It reminds, you're talking about like being an expert and the internet warriors. You know what just popped into my head? Connor Hellebuck's stance and his stick off the ice. And the first time we shared a drill from Net 360, and Connor's got his stick off the ice as he skates around, as he's doing his crease movement patterns. And people are lighting us up in the comments on social media, including some goalie coaches that worked at very high levels, talking about the absurdity of this and get his stick on the ice. And this is before Connor sort of popped, so to speak. And
it's worked out okay.
Don't hear anybody tell Connor Hellebuck how to play the game right now.
It was unusual, though.
100%.
We hadn't seen that before.
It was unusual, but I would argue
a little.
I would argue that you saw it more and more as sticks became, again, a little bit smaller. I'm actually amazed that way back in the day when we had these tiny sticks that people weren't doing it. But we created these absurd stances in order to keep our little tiny sticks on the ice.
Because everybody said you had to keep your stick on the ice.
But how many stick saves do you make standing? I mean, that's really the answer to it all for me.
And so to me, it's a great example of what we're talking about here. Because if the Internet Warriors had won, or if USA Hockey had said in their bronze level presentation that one of our fundamentals,
stick on the ice,
the fundamental is stance and the fundamental is skating. The fundamental is not stick on the ice. Does Connor Hellebuck ever get his stick off of it? Right. So it's funny. It popped into my head that way.
But if you think you know better, you can design a drill that will teach him better by firing lots of pucks on the ice at him. And guess what? He's probably going to problem solve it and make the save without having to put his stick on the ice and prove his own point.
And to that point, there was within this a balance to be had for Connor Hellebuck, because admittedly in some of those drills he had it like, it's one thing to have it off the ice. There were some where he used to
parallel the
point
ice
there where he'd almost and point it out at the shooter. Yeah. And Wade Flaherty told me once during those drills that when it got too extreme, he would just whisper in a shooter's ear, rocket a few into his feet. Get the worm burner, the ice burner out there, and that will force him to make sure he's conscious of how high he's holding it. So a great example in real life with a guy who's turned into the best goalie in the NHL right now, on his way to a third Vezina second straight. Because it kind of ties into what they're trying to do. Like, don't tell him how to do it. Let him problem solve.
Put a bow on it. The more than 100 people that were involved in this bronze level USA Hockey goaltending coaching seminar, there was keeners. There was the goalie coaches certainly involved in it, but a whole bunch of volunteers, a whole bunch of parents of goaltending coaches or goaltenders who aren't coaches. There was a much wider spectrum of people than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Well, because the philosophy is to get as many people armed with this knowledge out there at every level, so that an age-appropriate knowledge, so that hopefully more kids have somebody advocating for them, whether it's as simple as making sure they're not standing there for half the practice, not seeing any shots and getting overwhelmed with shots they don't have time to reset on for the second half. Like, that's going to lead to more kids having good experiences when they're in goal and wanting to continue playing the goal, because they have a bit of a shortage down there, right? We talked about that as well. And I'm starting to hear anecdotally of situations, not everywhere, but in some cities in Canada, where they're struggling to get two for certain teams, and all the negative stuff we've created around goaltending, how expensive it is and all those things. So, I think there's a lot of different levels to this, and having more people out there to work with goalies right down to the volunteer level is a great approach in my mind. And, not to bring this back to Canada, but the juxtaposition is pretty telling, where the beginner level goalie coaching programs here in a lot of areas, and I've had somebody from those programs tell me this, are gatekept, right? So, to try and limit the numbers, because we don't want too many people moving through those ranks. And to me, that's when you juxtapose that with how they're doing it in the States, it's absurd. They probably have their reasons, but it makes very little sense in terms of wanting to avoid the situations we see far too often and hear about at InGoal here far too often. Man, on my team, my kid gets no help.
I would love to go through the Canadian equivalent just to see how different they are or similar they are, because that would be interesting too. And my hopes is that there's probably my hope would be that there would be some differences, just because you don't want the same way everywhere. But I'd be curious to see what those differences would be.
Well, as I said, if one of them is one's designed to get more people that are able to help goalies on the ice, and one, even if it is more technical, and Hutch can speak to it because he's taken it. If it's limiting how many people have this knowledge, I question the point of it.
I suspect, having been in the education world, that the people behind both programs would argue that they have designed them for the same purposes. And everybody has, of course, all the best of intentions. So I think they are all trying to accomplish the same things. But of course, there are differences between the two programs. So I can't stand here and pronounce, the Canadian program is different because of X, Y, and Z, because I expect that if I were to do that, there would be some people involved in creating it that would say, well, no, that's not what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to accomplish exactly the same thing. It's presented in a slightly different way. The intention is the same in both places. And yeah, just leave it at that. If you get the opportunity to take either or both, I would certainly encourage people to do it.
Still to come, we have our Visual Edge ProReads. We have the Stop It Goaltending You, the app parent segment with Hutch. NHL Sense Arena feature interview is a marvelous conversation between Kevin Woodley and Darcy Kuemper that just happened in the last couple of days, and really interesting, walking us through his journey, and just a little update on what's going on with Darcy and the return to the Los Angeles Kings. We also have our gear segment, but we would be remiss not to discuss Tristan Jarry and the journey that he has endured this year with the Pittsburgh Penguins, waived and assigned back to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins. Woody.
Yeah, I've been not his first trip down there, right? I thought they scapegoated him a little bit at the beginning of the season, if I'm perfectly honest. I remember we talked about this at the time. Just an absurdly low expected save percentage, like just an absurdly tough environment. I think his expected when they sent him down the first time this year was like in the 838 range. Stuck in net for some of the most woeful defensive performances at the start of the year that we've seen all season. Like their first game of the year with Tristan Jarry in net, I think they gave up 16 high danger chances and something like 7 expected goals. You get enough of those and that ain't on the goaltender statistically. But, then again, I've seen some numbers where, his early goals, can't tell you for whatever reason, but the number of times he was beat on the first shot, the number of times he was beat on the first 2 shots, the number of times he was beat multiple times on the first 6 shots of a game. Starts matter. Defensive confidence matters. I still feel like he's being sort of paying a price for the contract that the general manager gave him when he first got there. Like he's not, there are other guys. Let me put it this way, guys. Adjusted save percentage right now in the National Hockey League. Yes, he is below expected. Yes, out of the 75 goalies that have seen 100 chances this year, he is 56 per ClearSight Analytics, minus 0.6%. Would you like me to read off some of the names that are right around him with the same number in easier environments for the most part? I'll give you a Sergei Bobrovsky, a Jeremy Swayman, and a Thatcher Demko. Those are the 3 names that surround Tristan Jarry above and below. 2 of them below in terms of performance relative to environment. Only one of them has been called out so publicly and sent to the minor leagues. I know it hasn't gone well. I'm not ignoring the early goals and what that can do for the confidence of a team and their goaltender. But it does feel a little bit like he's being singled out for a team that has a lot of other problems.
Even those early goals, I'd love to see some numbers on those. Like, were those high danger chances? Did the Penguins just open the barn door off the opening faceoff? Probably.
Yeah, I can think of a few defensemen on that team that might.
Yeah, so, but we've said it here before, haven't we? You can't change the whole team, and I guess you're not going to change the head coach, so you just find a goalie who can make those saves. It's crazy.
The numbers for all three goaltenders that have played for the Penguins this year are pretty similar too.
Well, I'll give you this though. I will say this. Alex Nedeljkovic has actually played behind a worse environment. Like his expected save percentage is even lower than Jarry's, and he's on the right side of the expected. Like his results are positive. He's 35th out of those 75 goalies.
Oh, good.
So that might make it harder, like the juxtaposition between what Alex is doing in a even tougher environment and what Tristan was doing. And then I think part of this equation too is if I don't know, do they think they can get back in the hunt? I haven't looked at the standings lately. When he was up there, Joel Blum.
Yes, I think they do. They do think they can get.
Okay, when he was up there, Joel Blomqvist, like it's been a while. But again, in an environment where his expected save percentage was 10 points below the league average, and like at the end of the day, you know, you have to consider how porous this team is defensively. I know they played better of late. Blomqvist early in the season, like his numbers ranked top 20 in the league. So there's an element of maybe wanting to get him in here. But again, even with all of that, like there's no question, Jarry of the three has had the worst performance. But it does feel a little bit like he's kind of being singled out here. And hey, I get it. Like it's a big boy league. It's professional sports. But it is interesting how the gloves seem to be off with him, but not anyone else.
Here's a philosophical question, and Hutch, I'll be really curious to hear your answer. Is there a difference between early goals allowed and bad goals allowed? So you can allow a bad goal at any point in the game or an early goal. Is one worse than the other, or are they the same? Because I've talked to a couple of coaches who have gone through this, and they're saying, this guy, he just puts us behind all the time, or we can't get through the first period. And they're not bad goals, but they're allowing 2 goals in the first period. And I know for a fact that there's bad goals allowed, but they never mention those. And it got me, the Jarry conversation got me thinking.
It makes sense. I mean, if you're up by 4 goals and you allow a quote unquote bad goal, it really doesn't affect your team. They can move on and keep playing. If you, we know how difficult it is to chase a game. So if you're down by a goal or 2 and chasing the game, you play differently as a team than you do if you're tied or up. So for sure, I think a coach would hate an early goal more than they would hate a bad goal, situation dependent. But that's awfully hard on a young goaltender. It's an awfully hard on an older goaltender in the National Hockey League because, as I said, it's not necessarily on him. It may be. But I guess the question is, as a coach, especially if you're a coach of a young goaltender, it's not okay to just tell him you can't let in early goals. You've got a responsibility to help him figure out what's going on so that doesn't happen. And I would suggest piling the pressure on them is certainly not going to make it any better or any easier for them. I struggle with this culture where, and I get it at the professional level, it is different, but I struggle with this culture where we just point fingers and say that's not good enough without necessarily giving the kids the solution or helping them problem solve it, to go back to what we were talking about before.
Not to sit on the fence here.
That's my job.
Because there is both here. Like I've been critical of how they've handled Jarry, but there's certainly some responsibility to be borne on his end. We talked about the early goals. When I look at sort of quality starts percentage, like how many of his starts overall would we be considered what you giving your team a chance to win? Ned's 74%, Blomqvist is 88%, and Jarry's at 50%.
Sure, but what's the definition of that?
It's how you perform relative to expected based on the shot quality.
Is it?
So are you under? Yeah.
Well, it's important for you to.
I'm looking at the clear sight number, so we're looking at how the goaltender performs relative to what he's
okay.
getting.
Well, that's important for you to define that, Woody, because there's I don't know if I want to say traditional, but there's a wider held metric of what a quality start is.
Come on. We know that I don't look at
but I think you need to say that because somebody's driving right now, listening in their car, and they're hearing quality start, and in their mind they're going to go to the metric that's more widely available. And I will have this wrong, but it's something like 3 or fewer goals or a save percentage within X of the league average. That's and that is just it really is.
It's arbitrary. So let me give you the flip side of the coin, and this is hammering on the team. I pulled up Pittsburgh's numbers defensively for the year. 5-on-5, high danger, expected goals against. 32nd in the league. High danger, expected goals against off the rush. And these are the most dangerous chances. Off the rush, high danger. 32nd in the league. 5-on-5 defensive zone. Expected goals against off high danger chances. 31st in the league. The only statistic where they are in the top half of the league, and it's barely at 16th, is their penalty kill expected high danger against. This is a team that doesn't and has not defended. It's reflected in the expected numbers for all three goalies. Jarry has admittedly performed the worst of all three. And last, this is a homework assignment for me for next week. I know Val Lequette has numbers in here in Clearside as I look these all up that can actually do like first 5 minutes of a period and see where you're ranked relative to the rest of the league. I will say this, when the game is tied, when they're up a goal or up a couple, Jarry's numbers, that's where they fall off a cliff. When they're down and trailing by even just by one, which this should be a good number, he's in the positives. But when they're tied or up a goal, he's almost like negative 8 goals this season relative to the environment in front of him. So the starts would obviously it's 0-0 at the start of the game, and when the first shot goes in, that's going to hurt you. So there's something to figure out there. But outside of that, again, it hasn't been great. But this is not fall off a cliff numbers for Tristan Jarry. This is not called out publicly, send you to the minor leagues numbers for Tristan Jarry. A couple of big names that aren't far behind him on this list.
Tied for the lead in National Hockey League shutouts a year ago.
It goes to show you how much shutout. We've talked about the shutout discussion before.
Yeah. We'll continue to watch and see where the Pittsburgh Penguins go from here. The InGoal Radio podcast presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Langley, thehockeyshop.com. Let's get into the gear segment, but first an update on Cam and company over at the Hockey Shop.
Well, we've been rolling out some Vaughn VX1. We had the pads and gloves last week. He's got it all in stock. So it may be January 16th, but it's Christmas every day at the Hockey Shop, source for sports, where they have new equipment coming in continuously. We're going to roll out that in a couple, I think soonish. We've already done the review because they have it in store. The True PX5. There's a new stick from True. There's always new stuff coming in, but it's also that time of the year where you may need to make sure you check out the website, thehockeyshop.com, on a semi-regular basis, because there are sales like crazy for all the new stuff that's coming in early than it used to. There is room on the shelf that needs to be created for it. And that means offering old stuff or older stuff, previous models at discounts. So make sure you check out thehockeyshop.com, not just for the discounts we typically find at this time of year, but new gear coming in on the regular. Remember, guys, like we talked about this last week, it used to be you didn't get the new gear till April. Well, now with lines being launched in January, it's early and earlier for some of these companies, some of them spreading out all over the year. So there's always new stuff, and that means there's always previous models on sale. And that Vaughn VX1, when we talked about the flex profile, there may be people out there that hear that and like, man, I better go get the V10 because that's the flex profile I wanted. The chances are you'll be able to find it on sale at thehockeyshop.com.
It is just incredible to see the shelves there and what's available.
I like to pull stuff off and make Cam put it back.
Are you there when he does that, Hutch?
Actually, you should see us filming the gear segments because I have to travel over there to do it. We're doing 3, 4, 5 segments at a time. And it really is chaos by the time we're done because do one segment, gear gets sort of tossed aside, the next set comes in, and by the end, there will be enough gear for 5 segments all over around them, stuffed in behind things so they don't show up on camera. Man, the week we did the one on glove breaks where there were 3 models from every manufacturer out there as well. It's heaven, though.
What are we talking about this week?
We're going to carry on with the Vaughn VX1 line, and we're going to look at their chest protector.
Looking forward to it. Let's get into it. Cam and Woody over at the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Langley.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports, Goalie Utopia. I'm me. He's Cam Matwiv. This is the new Vaughn Velocity VX1. V11 if you want to do it that way. This is the third different element of the new line that we've unveiled. We started with pads and glove and blocker. Then we went to the pants, very popular in the National Hockey League. And now we're into the chest protector, Pro Spec.
Also quite popular in the National Hockey League. Yes, sir.
It's there, but the pants are more commonly there. Let's put it that way.
Okay. So, chest, what's new? Gee, let's start by what's similar. You like the V10, you're going to like the V11.
Why?
Okay.
What does the goalie like about the V10? So what kind of goalie? Who is it for?
So first of all, the fit and the cut changed from older Velocity series. We saw a departure again from some of their older models when we went to the V10 and into now the VX1. So what we're getting is a little bit more of a tapered chest, a little bit boxier in the shoulder floaters, how to still create some good size to the goalie themselves, but not too wide overall. So still allowing the goalie to really get over top of themselves quite easily and get their hands forward without having a restriction of those shoulder floaters being too wide or too big.
Okay. So again, departure from old Velocity, but that core of Vaughn mobility remains.
Out of the box mobility, 100%. Still some refinements too is to increase the overall out of the box protection, which has always been a little bit of a hot topic with Velocity series chest protectors.
There was always the trade-off. There was sort of the stereotype was more mobile, but you might feel a few more.
Correct. And that's where one that I like to call it the arms right off the back feel thicker, more rigid, feels more protective right out of that box. That's always been a bit of a Velocity staple. Again, very mobile arm, but expect to see a few bruises here and there, sort of thing, right? That said, again, initial feel with this chest, it feels like it's thicker, it feels like it's more protective, but we haven't lost that flexibility right out of the box.
So you used to custom order and bring in models that were quote unquote pro beef arms,
Correct.
So beefed up arms. You don't feel the need to me, that's an example of the improvements they've made in the protection is you don't even feel the need to order pro beef models anymore. This does the job.
There's a reason why we don't do that, and that's exactly it right there.
Okay, so good call out.
So continuing on through the arm itself, they are laced in arms. Elastic lace for the lace in particular as well. So there is a little bit of adjustability in terms of macroing this in for yourself. I wouldn't say we could drop it by like a full inch by any means. That'd be a little bit too much. But that said, it still gives you a little bit more of that playroom to be able to find out, your exact fit.
So adjustability, you would just loosen it and it would hang a little lower? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
so it's already, I would say, at its highest point. But here, again, we can loosen that up a little bit to add a little bit more space. So moving down, continuing with the side of the chest itself, Vaughn's created a little bit more wrap to the actual ribs. So before on Velocity chest, this used to cut off quite a bit more. Now we're getting a lot more wrap, especially with those reverse VH situations, things like that. It's like your ribs are a little bit more exposed. We need that more wraparound protection, which is this chest is now providing.
Some of us got a little extra built-in layers. We don't need that.
Exactly, but it's
Little
still,
extra, especially after the holidays.
it still stings when you get hit. So another cause and effect of that as well, they've actually hidden that chest buckle
I saw that.
in behind the actual protection itself.
So you don't have to worry about buckles getting broken.
Ideally, yes. Could it still happen? 100%. Anything can happen. But that said, you definitely have a lesser chance of that being exposed to a shot.
Okay,
Okay,
like it.
moving on to the back.
What's this?
New feature. Again, speaking of Velocity chest from the past, we used to have, especially on some of those older models, when you would tighten them up and set them up properly in the shoulders, you'd have this little spike kind of come up right at the back of your spine. It used to sit up like this. You can always tell when a guy was wearing a Velocity chest. Gone are those days, and one of the reasons of that too is this additional feature and how they've set up the shoulders now. So the shoulders themselves on the inside of the chest, as we look into it, the way the flap sits now, that wraps around your shoulder blades nice and easy. You have a nice elastic piece at the back, so that kind of sits on the back of your neck as well. The reason of this now connects that all together and will now keep it down on the back of your neck as opposed to having it ride up and shoot up kind of like behind your mask. Again, I would see if we can get, Hutch to do a little bit of magic and see if we can find an old picture of some of those old Velocity chests.
I didn't know that. See, I'm learning something today, Cam. You're the expert.
Oh, man, that's what I'm here for.
It's
Continuing.
like when you have a really poor tailored suit and the gathers in the back. And
Exactly, and that helps to prevent against that, and I think it's a nice call out and a nice feature of the chest as well. Couple more things to finish off with. The shoulder floaters.
What about the adjustability here?
Exactly. So looking into it a little bit further, that's to be able to bring that unit up on you a little bit more.
Oh, we can adjust this way too.
Macro adjust actual floaters in terms of how they're sitting on you as well. So that's pulling on the inside of that shoulder floater where that's attached to.
Well, that is a ton of adjustability.
Exactly. So it really allows you to dial in that fit and make sure that it fits you specifically. Last call out, suspender buttons. Suspenders up and over top of the shoulder floaters. Tuck them down so they don't slide around. Great for those that are tucking in. I like to slide them in between my shoulder floaters so that way I don't lose a little bit of that size from the shoulders themselves. But hey, preference, to each your own.
Designed to be tucked, untucked, goes either way. How does it fit with the Vaughn Velocity VX1 pant that we did recently?
Both and great.
Both and great. So tuck it in, untuck it, you're covered, you're protected, you're mobile. The new Vaughn VX1 Velocity chest protector, Pro Spec protection from Cam. If you have any questions about fit especially, that's important here. Where can they get you?
604-589-8299 or 1-800-567-7790.
Or check them out at thehockeyshop.com. You can always reach them through the website and you'll get questions answered there as well.
I was interested in you guys talking about the advancements in the Vaughn chest being more protective.
It's definitely, it's always been, different brands are known for different things, right? Mm-hmm. And Vaughn chest protectors for the longest time were known for being more mobile, but you were going to feel more pucks. I'll go back to Henrik Lundqvist. I remember being in the room. He had an older model. Vaughn had just brought out its sort of carbon, I think V6 model. And I remember Henrik taking off his gear and his arms had bruises and he had all this stuff wrapped underneath it. And we had actually gotten the newer model. And of course, he wasn't a Vaughn guy at the time. And so we had gotten it for testing ahead of him having ever seen it. He was wearing a 3 generations old model, and this one was really well worn, and it was clear he was feeling pucks. And so I actually brought it into the locker room, and he went and tested it in the equipment room while I was talking to their head coach at the time as part of my NHL job, Alain Vigneault. And I remember getting a message the next morning that him and the equipment guy ordered 3 of them. So this is right up to the NHL. It was give and take, right? More mobile, one of the most mobile units out of the box, but you're going to feel more pucks. They have definitely started to tip that scales, and we've reflected that in our reviews over the years, and it continues with this one, because at the hockey shop, they used to order for their higher-end goalies, their junior goalies, because a lot of junior goalies come into the shop to buy their gear there. They used to order what they called Pro Beef. So they would always customize it, and they would customize it by beefing up the arms. And in the last couple of generations, including this new Vaughn VX1, Cam no longer feels the need to have that as a standard option at the hockey shop, because Vaughn has already increased the protection on the arms to the point where guys like me should probably stop talking about that as the stereotype that applies to Vaughn. They've done a good job of making sure they still got the mobility, and on that scale, they're still going to be one of the more mobile, versus you don't feel a thing chest protectors. You might feel some pucks, but they've done a good enough job of beefing up the protection in the arms in particular. Oh, wow. I've been talking to Cam too much. I used in particular. They've done a good job of beefing that up to the point where he doesn't feel he has to custom order more protection for his goaltenders. And I think that's an important message, because, here at InGoal, we can fall into stereotypes continuing from one year to the other. And that one is only partially relevant on the mobility to protection side.
Slide over to the Stop It Goaltending You, the app parent segment with David Hutchison, the latest from Stop It Goaltending You.
Well, the best from Stop It Goaltending You, in my opinion, and I'm biased here, is the fact that when you get a subscription to the app, you also get a subscription to InGoal magazine. So you put together all the power of the new material that we deliver on a weekly basis, the ProReads, the chance to sit down and watch videos with NHL goalies, with over 25 years of expertise from the Stop It Goaltending You people. Brian DeCord with daily primers, 5 every week, 1-minute lessons to help you become a better goaltender. Nice quick hits. This week, this is a good one. How we carry ourselves as goaltenders. How we present ourselves, how we carry ourselves in the crease. There's some important lessons here. Frankly, there's some lessons here that there's some NHL goalies that need to learn in terms of how they carry themselves and how it impacts how their teammates think of them. I've heard some stories about that lately, some really valuable lessons there. There's a 5-minute goalie clip and then a 20-minute each week breakdown. This week, it's Goalie IQ. They break down video of Askarov, Yaroslav Askarov, who we hope to have as a featured guest here in the near future, and Thatcher Demko at the other end of the ice. So they broke down a game between those two of late and sort of watched how they handled different situations. It's a great learning tool where at ProReads at InGoal, we have the goalies talk about their save selections. They watch it from a coach's eye above and make notes and compare so you can sort of learn how these goalies managed the game and sort of compare notes and maybe try some of those things themselves. So between us at InGoal and the folks over at Stop It Goaltending and their 25 years of expertise, there is no shortage of great tips and advice that you get out of a subscription from Stop It Goaltending U, the app.
Hutch, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Before I get going with this week's parent segment, guys, I do want to thank everybody who reached out this week via parents@ingoalmag.com. It was probably the busiest week on there. After I shared my experience last week as a goalie parent about our son being traded, a lot of people reached out. The concern and support from the InGoal community for us as a family and for Maddie in particular really was heartwarming. Let me let everybody know that he's doing great. He's loving the incredible hockey culture in Saskatchewan, where he's found a fantastic team in the Moose Jaw Warriors. He's got supportive coaches and a billet family that already makes it feel like home for him. In fact, I think I told you guys earlier, this week he had a day off and he achieved his lifelong dream. He went and spent over 2 hours in minus 21 degree weather on the backyard rink. So couldn't be happier for him. Thanks to everybody who was worried. This week, I'm working on a new segment, but we're not ready to unveil it yet. Not a new segment, a new edition of the parent segment. Tentatively, I have it titled The Top 5 Annoyances for Goalie Parents. You know, things like the referee not blowing the whistle fast enough or threatening young goalies with a penalty if they cover the puck at the wrong time. Those sort of things that annoy you as a goalie parent. If any of you have ideas of things that annoy you, want me to add into that list, please send them to me. Again, parents@ingoalmag.com, and we'll get them in next week or when we come up with that final list. One annoyance that I'm sure is going to make everybody's list is headshots. And of course, we all hate them. But you know me, looking for the bright side, I also figured they can give us a bit of a teaching opportunity. So that got me thinking this week, and it reminded me of something that we have seen New York Rangers American League goaltender Dylan Garand do. He used to finish every warm-up, guys, by asking the shooters to fire pucks directly at his head. You may have seen it in the article that we published on InGoal quite some time ago when Dylan had played in the World Juniors, and we'll put a link in the show notes so people can see the video, and I might even put it up on social this week. Every time Dylan's on the ice, he finishes his warm-ups pointing at his own head to tell the shooter what to do. And it is so funny when there's a new shooter on the ice who looks around in confusion, wondering if Dylan is really asking what he seems to be. Spoiler alert, he absolutely is. And he wants that shooter to rip the puck at his head. And that's to create the certain amount of control with his hands, a little bit of hand speed. No, it's not really because he wants to stop himself from getting hit in the head, but maybe it's a bit of a help. Now, like many parents, when our kid was younger, we invested in the best helmet that we could afford when he started taking those high head shots. That often said, I would joke with my son, guys, and I'd say, why didn't you just catch it? Of course, as long as he wasn't hurt. So how can a young goalie learn a skill to make that catch, even if it's not all about saving ourselves from headshots? And the answer? Learn to catch with a baseball glove. Woody, I might need your help on this one this week. Baseball players are incredible athletes, just like Kevin Woodley, and their catching skills do translate directly to being on the ice. And they don't start at shortstop in a goalie stance, although I'd love to see Woody play shortstop in case he actually does. When they're catching a ball, they focus and they bring it into the middle of their body. Woody, this, like I said, this is your area of expertise, but playing catch, a lot of balls come straight at your head, do they not?
They do.
Yeah.
Yes, you're digging into the deep recesses of my brain because it's been a long time since I've had a catch. But yes, certainly they're aiming it at your chest and they might miss a foot.
There you go. Chances are that's where Woody's concussions all began, was actually as a baseball player and not as a hockey player.
I don't remember.
Playing catch with a ball glove, of course, is not about stopping headshots. I don't think we're going to solve that problem for you here, but it did the thinking about it did give me the idea that using a baseball glove is something we should reinforce for people, because it helps you become a better athlete, helps you control the play on the ice. The more pucks you can stop with your glove, the more rebounds you control, the more play you've controlled. In our podcast with LA Kings goaltending director Bill Ranford, you might remember, he mentioned that not enough kids know how to catch pucks well. And he even said that with their NHL goaltenders, they'll bring in baseball gloves in development camp and help them learn how to catch. So don't just have your goaltender bouncing a ball off the walls by themselves. Grab a pair of ball gloves, head outside, unless you're in Moose Jaw this week, and play catch with them. Not only are you going to have fun and help them become a better goalie, but you're actually going to be spending some quality time with your kid out there having fun. On so many hockey road trips over the years, guys, we brought ball gloves with us. It's a great way to pass the time. And when life throws you a curveball, like having to wait hours for the next available ferry home, your kid learns to take it all in stride. And rather than being frustrated, they enjoy the time hanging out with you and playing catch. So that's all for this week. Get some ball gloves, start working with them. Don't forget to send in your top annoyances as a goalie parent so that I can add them into that segment when we get to it.
Okay, so 2 things. One, was it Billy Ranford or was it Sudarshan Maharaj of the Ducks with the baseball?
It was Billy.
Both?
It was Billy. Member Sudsy actually said that they started to use lacrosse sticks and they were working on lacrosse in dev camp.
Sudsy definitely used to use baseball gloves too. They would actually have his goalies play 500. Remember 500
That's right.
up?
You did mention
remember
that.
playing 500 up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They used to play 500 up. So I just wanted to make sure. I thought it was Billy too. So I just wanted to make sure we clarified. Good job, Hutch. I shouldn't have questioned. But yeah, Sudsy bringing out the lacrosse stick. So you're right. You're right. I definitely didn't take any in the head. I will say that all these years later, my ability to catch a baseball hasn't helped my ability to catch a puck. But that might be because of the 20 years or so in between doing the same. It makes a ton of sense. And we see guys at the highest level, as you said, work on this skill using other sports, whether it's lacrosse or baseball.
Let's turn it around. When my kid was, 5 or 6 years old, I threw a couple of fly balls to him in the backyard, and he quickly ran away, terrified that he was going to get drilled in the face catching a fly ball for the first time. So we made the opposite switch. I went and grabbed a goalie mask, put it on him, and he immediately learned how to catch the fly balls, and because he wasn't afraid of getting hit, and then on he went.
I'm sure his junior buddies are going to appreciate you telling the story of him running away from fly balls at this point.
I hope they're listening.
What would be your first pet peeve, Woody, if you were going to put your body inside of a goalie parent?
Well, first off, I've never had to do that.
You're Uncle Woody. You're pretty close.
Well, okay, so
Woody gets more annoyed than me.
I don't know that I can answer this because of what did you call them, Hutch? Woodyisms? Like 14-point answers?
That you've created a whole new term. I said don't woodify it, but they are Woodyisms.
Woodify. Yeah. I would woodify this. Yeah, and I be careful here, but like my frustration in watching right up at the highest levels has been sometimes the lack. What's going on in front of them drives me a little nuts, and that's because I watch everything through the lens of the National Hockey League, and so watching goalies, watching a crowd, an audience, and even coaches pin something on a goaltender when in real time I'm identifying 6 crucial breakdowns in front of them, that drives me nuts. And that's probably not fair because you don't expect everyone to watch through the lens of having watched 25 years of National Hockey League games on an almost nightly basis and doing it for a living. But the amount of times I see these mistakes in front of them that never get corrected, but they're supposed to be the ones correcting everything. So that's a big picture one, and I'll just leave it at that because we don't have time for me to woodify this.
I'll get into players that dig at the puck and the whistle not going in time, and the referee not dealing with those players. They just blow the whistle and go, it's good, let's move on. Once had those players.
Once had a finger broken by a guy who dug so hard he slashed me on top of the glove. I won't name the brand. They didn't have great protection back there. This is quite a few years back, and actually broke my finger digging at a puck, and they didn't penalize him in a freaking beer league game.
And we get into another one of our pet phrases around here, Darren. Everything happens to Woody.
Everything happens to Woody.
This one's crooked, boys. This one's crooked. That's not the middle one. It's not the middle one, but you can see how it doesn't go straight anymore.
ProReads. I still want to do a ProReads with Woody, but like with Woody as the guy that's breaking down the tape.
Yeah, except when you do it in the NHL, you say, "Can you tell us what you were thinking here?" With Woody, it'd be, "What the hell were you thinking there?"
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I didn't mean to fall down on this play. My plan wasn't to end up on my ass, but I am actually trying to swing my stick at this guy. Yes, that was purposeful.
We are going to do that at some point. ProReads with Woody breaking down his own game, but not this week.
We're gonna have to wait on that one. We may have missed our window, boys. I see the knee surgeon on Friday for a potential replacement appointment, so we may have to get that one in soon. ProReads this week. We've got a competent goaltender. Matter of fact, we've got one of the hottest goaltenders in the American Hockey League featured in ProReads this week, Devin Cooley. We've still got him in San Jose gear. I've been meaning to talk to you about this one, Hutch. Even though the video San Jose, we might need to change it to Calgary so people recognize it. Image of Calgary, logo of Calgary. I don't know how it works. It'll confuse people, but Devin Cooley right now in Calgary is killing it in the American League. First-time American Hockey League All-Star, and he was our guest on this week's ProReads. Simple stuff, 2-on-1, but not so simple how we approach it. We talk a lot about sort of reads and instincts, and what I love about these ProReads, and Devin Cooley does a great job of it, is he just breaks them down. You know, not just what are we looking for as this 2-on-1 gets over the blue line. In this case, it's handedness of the pass option, but explaining why the handedness of the pass option affects your depth specifically. Is it a one-timer? Is it not a one-timer? If it's not a one-timer, I can take more ice on the original guy because I've got more time to get across potentially. What to happen when if the guy pulls up? So many of us just continue drifting and retreating. What to recognize when you start to stop and hold your edges. There was so much in this one, and Devin Cooley, it's been great to watch him have all the success he's having with the Calgary Flames now in the American League, and I think inevitably as a late bloomer headed for the National Hockey League, I think he's going to be a National Hockey League regular. When and where, we'll see, but you can see it all coming together for him, and it's fun to watch. And you're not surprised if you've been paying attention to his ProReads. If you listen to his podcast, featured guest appearance in the summer, just love the way this kid approaches the game, has fun, love the way he thinks the game is always trying to learn. And so it feels really good to sort of have gotten that glimpse and then watch him have this success. And he provides another glimpse in this week's ProReads, brought to you by Visual Edge, because the way they read the game, Visual Edge will help give you the eyes to see the game, to allow you to read the game. Online training tool that improves both cognitive and visual functions. Visual Edge, make sure you check them out at visualedge.com. You can check them out on all our ProReads over the past, 2.5 months now. There's links in there. There's discounts in there through InGoal. You don't have to be a subscriber. You can still get 15% off. Hutch, what's the code for 15% off?
InGoal.
And then if you're a subscriber, you can go to the ProReads, log in, and you will get your members only discount of 30% off. Visual Edge walks you through. We talk about divergence. That's your ability to sort of pull your eyes back and see in a broader spectrum. Convergence, when that 2-on-1 gets closer and closer and you need to lock in on the puck, your ability to see the puck coming at you and track it through. That's convergence. Just 2 of 6 visual traits that they identify, sort of rate your skill at using the online tool on their glasses, and then build a program to help you improve on. Visual Edge will help you see the game better. ProReads will help you read the game better. Put those 2 things together as we have at ingoalmag.com, and you've got a recipe for more saves.
Such a tool. An ability.
That's what people say about me.
That's why he's the perfect spokesman.
A method to be able to work on that tool of your game. I'll rephrase that from now on. Sorry to put you in a bad spot, Woody. That was all my fault.
That's okay. I know who I am and what I am.
We have to get T-shirts made.
I am self-aware, Darren.
It's already happened to Woody.
Speaking of T-shirts, not to just derail this and go right back to our original, but boy, am I regretting, because a lot of USA Hockey, the program we talked about at the beginning, is about creating goalies for life. Like people that love the position and want to be goalies forever. And what a massive miss on my part, not wearing my All Roads Lead to Beer League t-shirt in the second part of that seminar.
I think you did okay.
All Roads Lead to Beer League.
You guys got some good shout outs on that
ProReads got some good shout outs.
Sure
Not so much
did,
us,
yeah.
but ProReads.
Sense Arena, NHL Sense Arena brings us our feature interview on InGoal Radio, the podcast. This week, you catch up with Darcy Kuemper.
Yeah. Well, but first of all, speaking of great tools, Hutch.
Speaking of great tools, NHL Sense Arena. I talked before about using a baseball glove and it being an important skill that you can develop off the ice. But I have a feeling if you were to list the best off-ice training tools, NHL Sense Arena would show up right at the top. Ice time, as we all know, costs a small fortune, and kids are rarely getting enough goalie-specific training time as it is. But NHL Sense Arena is here to fill that void, because once you have it, you can practice with it as much as you want every day. 15 minutes, an hour, however much time you or your kid wants to spend on NHL Sense Arena, it's there. It's easier on the body. You're not taking those headshots. Although I have told the story of how we did get a headshot that actually rattled us one time just because it was that real. You can train all you want in virtual reality with a system that is so good that NHL goalies use it to prepare on game day. In fact, one of the many training plans that's included with NHL Sense Arena is Seattle's Joey Decord's game day warm-up. Yeah, the same one he actually uses in the National Hockey League, you can use on NHL Sense Arena. And let me be clear, I am not saying that Sense Arena has duplicated what Joey is able to do on the ice because he has access to more ice than you. Joey uses NHL Sense Arena as part of his warm-up. NHL Sense Arena then is not a toy, but it is a lot of fun. It's a serious training tool with programs designed by pros to help you become a better goaltender. Face all the shots you want, try all the programs, try the neurocognitive drills, and if you want, yep, you can even face NHL shooters. NHL Sense Arena, grab it today, sensearena.com, and don't forget the code IGM50 and you'll save even more.
Wonderful stuff. And we've all been able to be exposed to NHL Sense Arena, and it is so much fun. You don't even know that you're training, really, because you're just on the ice. It's really cool. Woody.
You guys remember speed dating? Probably not. Probably happened after we were all settled in. You guys know the concept of
I'd
speed
go on
dating?
a date and then she'd dump me right away. Is that what it is?
Exactly. I'm right with you. Hutch and I did the same thing.
The date ended quick. That's your version of speed dating from your youth?
Yeah.
Well, you know how it is. You know, you get to know somebody really quick. We sort of have this week's feature interview as a version of speed dating. Due to unforeseen circumstances with the LA Kings schedule, our time with Darcy Kuemper was a little shorter than we originally planned, but we had him locked in as our featured guest, so we made the best of it. And I got to say, he delivered. This is the shorter than our usual feature guest interviews, but it is loaded. You might want to listen to this one twice, because once we get into, say, from the second question on, we are getting into details about his game, details about his evolution, details that you can apply to your game or not. But we get into details, and we get into them fast and furious in our feature interview with Darcy Kuemper, presented by NHL Sense Arena. It is short, but not short on information, advice, and insights from this Stanley Cup champion, a guy who in his second time with the Kings, which is also very rare, is top 10 in the National Hockey League right now in adjusted save percentage, and climbing the charts quickly as the second half of the season starts, into the fringes of a Vezina Trophy conversation.
I'm really excited this is the first time on the podcast for Darcy Kuemper. We've talked so many times over the years. It's kind of hard to believe you are where you're at in your career. Like, it feels like yesterday, my friends. We were just kind of chatting and you were new to all this. Looking back, what's the memory that jumps out the most right now?
Winning the cup obviously is a tough one to replicate, but there's been several other moments that stick with you, like first game here in this building, and playing against guys that I grew up watching and idolizing. That pretty surreal, but winning the cup is a tough one to beat. That's a childhood dream that not many get to really live out. So I'm just really grateful that I was able to be on such a good team and live that experience.
Okay, so I remember that first game. I got to cover that first game. So we've both been around for a while. Coming back to LA this year, we don't see that often. Like, not just goalies, but even players going sort of back to a team you played before. benefits? Like, are there benefits? Has the transition been easier because you've been a part of this organization in the past?
Yeah, night and day easier. Just knowing some of the, a lot of the staff's the same, but just the area, you're not moving to a new city and trying to find your way around. You know the city, you know the facilities, and obviously some former teammates. So the transition's been super easy, and very thankful that I was given the opportunity to come back to such a great organization.
So it's funny. I was talking with Linus Allmark recently about trade deadline and how hard that can be for guys to change teams. Simple things like knowing how long it takes to get to the practice rink so that your routines aren't disrupted. Those things matter? Oh,
they matter big time. And I think getting traded in the off season, makes transitions a lot easier because, you're going through a full training camp and kind of learning your way. But, you get traded in the middle of a season at a deadline. I've only had to experience it once, but all of a sudden meeting times are different. And, PKs in the morning instead of at night and little things like that. And then you have to readjust your whole routine on the fly. So, you got to deal with the circumstances and adjust as quickly as you can. But in the off season makes it a lot easier to just kind of go through a training camp, learn the ropes as everyone else is getting back into it as well.
Players have changed, coaches have changed, but is there familiarity in terms of on the ice from even the handful of guys that are still here or systems?
A lot of it's different, but I think, having Kopi still here, such a great leader.
Not a bad guy to anchor that with, eh?
Yeah. So he's, kind of the benchmark that everyone follows up to. And when everyone tries to play like him as a goalie, it's pretty nice. So it's special to play with guys like that. Like I've had an opportunity to play with a lot of, future Hall of Famers, and, he's one of them. And you just kind of cherish those opportunities.
Go back to that first game. You talk about mentors. You talked about guys that impacted you growing up. Like, how's your game evolved from there to here? And there's probably a lot of different voices that have been involved in that process because of the different stops along the way.
Yeah. Coming in, I feel like I was just going out there and competing. Back then, I think the position was just starting to get a little bit more technical, but it was still a lot of different variations and styles that you would see across the league. So you just go out there and stop the puck, really. And now I think since then, I've had a lot of chance to work on my technical side of the game. Different voices with different goalie coaches being on different teams. So you kind of pick up tidbits here and there and build your game as a whole. And I think you just want to never stop learning. Always have the mindset that you want to get better, and then you can keep improving your game as you go along.
Do you maintain that? Like I would imagine, because you've had a couple different voices in the last couple of years. Mike Buckley now here with the Los Angeles Kings, Scott Murray with the Washington Capitals. Do you get to a point where you know what your foundation is and then you're willing to work around the edges? Or do you have to be careful not to abandon the foundation? And is that you must be at a point in your career where you know what that foundation is. In your mind, what would it be? How would you explain it to others?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm a bigger guy. My foundation's always going to be my positioning, my depth. I feel like if I'm playing at good depth, I take up a lot of the net, and that's when I'm at my best. So, like you said, you want to be learning, but you do have to be a little bit careful that you don't get away from what makes you. Because if you start changing things too much, and then you're not going to feel comfortable out there. And end of the day, when the puck drops, you want to feel comfortable about your game, so you're not thinking out there, and that's where you have to be a little bit careful. But with that, you can work on things without changing who you are as a goalie as well.
Can you give me an example? Like, is there one thing that maybe you've added? Like, I know it's only been half a season with Mike, but I know he talks about motion. Like, is that something you've put into your game differently than maybe it was at your previous stop or previous stop?
Yeah, we. Right from our first time on the ice together, we started working on motion and having some fluidity to your game, and that's something that I hadn't really, you kind of do a little bit naturally, but hadn't really talked about it or focused on a whole lot. And I feel like it's just really helped my game with my movement. Like, I feel like I'm able to get to places quicker and then use the foundation of my size and my depth to my advantage. And so that's a perfect example of adding a little something to your game without getting away from what makes you you.
What's the hardest part of that? Because we've seen this, again, Linus in Boston, they called it, I can't actually now, recoil, right? Like, and it sort of, became something that was talked about a little more. What's the toughest part of adding that? Like, obviously we've all played with flow against the rush, but in zone's different. How do you get used to that?
I think the challenge with it is if you start doing it too soon or too much, you're going to start playing really deep.
You end up on your goal line.
So it's a real feel thing. It's a timing thing. So it's reading the play, but also like you can't start your recoil, if you want to call it that, when a guy's not a shooting threat, and then all of a sudden you're going back and forth, or you're stuck on your goal line. So it's just a timing thing, a feel thing to how the game's evolving in front of you. And I think once you get that down, it puts you in a really good spot to handle anything really that comes your way.
Some guys have talked about just sort of releasing the edges. Like it's not like an active reverse C cut. It's subtle, is it not? Yeah,
it's not. If you start C cutting, it's going to be too big of a movement. So I think releasing the edge is a perfect term for it. And it's almost like a little weight shift just to get you a little bit of momentum going backwards.
Okay. So Scotty, some things that you maybe took away from your time with him? I know there's a lot of focus on tracking, and like I noticed how tall you are in your stance, like through the thighs and stuff looks really good right now. Again, we talk about adding all these pieces. What were some of the takeaways from your time with him?
Yeah, we worked a lot on tracking, and we also did a lot of reverse work, edge work, which I feel like it really helped me just handle different post plays, allow me to play with a little bit more of a hinge, and then be able to recoil from that position from the RVH. So that was a big focus of ours.
So inside leg, like being able to hinge around with it?
Yeah, like using your inside leg, the edge work, just
almost like a rudder.
Yeah, almost like a rudder, and really anchoring on that post. That was a big focus of ours, and something that I'm using in my game now. I feel like it's really helping me.
I noticed that you also, and maybe this is just a practice thing, I haven't studied film or anything like that, Darcy. I don't know that kind of, I'm just not that in depth, but like hold your edges in, like you sort of set up for a reverse, but you don't default into it too prematurely. Hold that inside edge. Is that part of the patience process as this game becomes so bloody dynamic?
Yeah, I feel like if each goalie is different, but if I get in my reverse too early, you can get a little stagnant. So I feel like if you just start sitting there waiting for the game to come to you, which you do want to do, but it keeps you a little bit more engaged, a little bit more active, to just hold it a little bit and then rely more on timing rather than just sitting there too early.
The way the game's changed, what's the biggest change to you? Like the way the attacks, the dynamic offense. As a goalie, we hear a lot about it. What to you is the biggest change in terms of what you face on a night in, night out basis out there?
Well, I think the speed of the game has really opened up, and I think that comes with how skilled the guys are nowadays. But, it used to be when I first came in the league, a lot of repetitive, pucks in, cycle them up to low to high, pound the puck, get traffic, which is its own challenge in a way. But now the game's so east-west, lateral. As a goalie, I think that's why like having some motion to your game is really important, because it allows you to freeze you up to make those east-west pushes and be able to get into position on those backdoor plays, even plays low to high to the slot. The passes are so quick and so good that you need to try to stay one step ahead of it.
And as we wrap this up, depth, you talked about depth and using your size. Have you had to change how you manage that because of all that dynamic movement? Like the understanding that I think people think of aggressive depth as like, heels out and like white ice behind your skates. I'm guessing it's not that for you.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that you're not touching your paint, at least. But you do want to be touching the top, whether it's your toes, heels, depends on the situation. But I feel like if you start backing up too much, especially, you see traffic back up a lot of guys, and it might feel a little bit better there, but also like you want to be in a position where the puck might just hit you. If it's coming through traffic, you want to be as big as possible, and I think that's why you definitely still want to be touching the top of your paint. But if you start getting too far out, I think you'll be chasing the game pretty fast.
Last one. Darcy Kuemper, Stanley Cup champion, could go back to Darcy Kuemper first game. What would be the one piece of advice you would give that young man that I watched play his first game here?
Just enjoy the ride. I think, being a goalie at any level, there's a lot of pressure, and there's some stress that can come with it, but, just have fun with it, enjoy it. And, everything happens for a reason. There's going to be highs and lows, but just keep a smile on your face and keep enjoying it.
Thanks, Darcy.
Thank you very much.
I've enjoyed watching him this year. I like his kit too, his setup.
Is that they're trying to nail me on my regret that I couldn't slip in one more question because I wanted to ask him about the switch to true?
No, I like the mask. I like the color scheme. I like it all.
It's a good looking setup, and he's got a good looking game. It's interesting to watch. He talked about using his body and his size. I was there, and we kind of hinted at it. I watched his NHL debut with the Minnesota Wild against the Vancouver Canucks. And the one thing I remember as sort of part of my, quote unquote scouting report, because that's not what I was doing, but just watching the game, I was so impressed when he first came up with what I called at the time, I think I labeled it soft seams. His ability to sort of close up holes and present big, but absorb pucks. Nothing goes through the body, but it's not, the pucks aren't rocketing off him back into dangerous areas. He just seemed to sort of ease his way into shots and hold them in the seams between his arm and his body, almost like a reactive block, and sort of moved into pucks so well. And that was a long time ago. You watch his game now and he talks about utilizing his size. He is playing. We talked about recoil. We wrote the article with Linus Ullmark in LA under Mike Buckley. They use what they call motion, which is a similar concept. And Darcy got into that. Allows him to use his size, present really big, and then just make sure he's not stuck as he does it. So I really enjoyed the conversation. I really enjoy watching him play. Watch his setup, watch his stance, watch him. He looks like a goalie. I know that's a crazy. I can't believe I just said that out loud, but like, there are elements of Darcy's game that you'd watch and you'd be like, yeah, like I want to take a picture of this. Like if somebody asks me, this is the snapshot I give them. And it's absurd because Connor Hellebuck, we talked about how different he is and everything. But Darcy just like, he's the guy you take a photo of almost and do a silhouette and put him on a t-shirt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know we
hate it. There is no stereotype. There's no one way to skin this cat, so to speak.
T-shirt one. You could have just leave out the looks like a goalie and he belongs on a t-shirt. There you go.
Can we edit that out, Hutch? Because I hate looks like a goalie.
I don't mind that.
Well, there's too many scouting reports that are like looks like a goalie.
That's where you guys are too close to the forest to see the trees. Looks like a goalie we can relate to.
There's trees?
I think we only see the trees, maybe not the forest. That's the problem, isn't it? Whatever.
There's a forest?
What's a tree?
Chances are Woody ran into one of those trees and he's now trying to wonder what he's looking up at them. All he sees is the
forest is where I play golf.
Just go for a walk. You'll find it eventually.
Touch some grass, Woody.
Have a good week, you guys. Anything on the agenda?
It's a really good question. You know what? Let's tease this. We do have something on the agenda that I think goalie coaches and goalie schools are going to want to pay attention to in the coming weeks. So we'll leave it at this. It's a bit of a blind tease. It's still a work in progress. We haven't done it in nearly a decade, which is absurd given our position and the amount of people that read us and look to us. It's time for a goalie school guide and sort of allowing goalie coaches around North America and I guess the world to share information on their upcoming goalie schools, becoming a resource where young goalies can look and find out who's offering what camps when and plan out their summers. We've got some help coming on board to work with us on this. So look for that in the coming weeks. If you're a goalie coach and you've listened to the very end, you run a goaltending school, you can send us a note, info@ingoalmag.com, because once we're ready to roll this out in full, we'll make sure you're the first to get it. I've probably blindsided Hutch here by putting it out there into the world while we're still in the planning stages. We know we don't have much time. We're trying to turn this around really quickly. So, yeah, goalie coaches, if you're already a part of the goaltending school partnership program, you'll be included in this. If you're looking for more information on this or the goalie school partnership program, because they sync quite nicely, make sure you reach out, info@ingoalmag.com. And pretty soon we'll have a new name on there to send you an email to. Because we realize we're overwhelmed and we're going to get some help running this.
I think that's a good idea.
You sync it?
I don't know. Woody just said sync and I had to, never mind.
I like it.
This is a little inside baseball. Every time we record a podcast, a gear segment, we run two microphones and one set of microphones is on my phone. That's how it records. Like it's run remotely off my phone. And there's Cam's mic and there's Kevin's mic. And every time, before each one, I have to resync them. And I'm like, hold on a sec. I've just got to sync. And Cam, inevitably, every single time I'm going to beat him over the head with a blocker if he does it anymore, says, oh, what are you thinking?
You think I'm bad, but poor Cam's children are going to face a lifetime of the worst dad jokes ever. Probably.
Yeah,
Not even poor.
He's gonna be begging us.
I think it's
he's
awesome.
gonna beg us to delete those videos at some point,
I
isn't
think
he?
it's awesome.
Have a great week, you guys. I love this idea of the goalie school guide. Look forward to seeing it and enjoy the journey of goaltending via InGoal Radio, the podcast.